So who doesn't love a little bonus content? I couldn't just teach you how to design and plant your garden and just leave you off at that, because that's really where the journey begins. Once your garden is planted, now you have to do all of the maintenance in order for you to actually get the dream, or create the dream and get the results you desire, right? The plants are in the ground, but now we need to care for them in order to get that harvest. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is watering. And this may be contrary to whatever you've heard. Do not water every day. It is so bad for your garden. Unless you live in like a bone dry, arid climate where you have to continuously water your soil for it to stay moist, do not water your garden every single day, because it's going to create weak plants. What I want you to do is water your garden 2 to 3 times a week max, and that's if it doesn't rain. But I want these waterings to be deep. The deeper the waterings, the deeper the water will penetrate into your soil, and it will cause your root system to be bigger and stronger. If you don't water as often, what it forces the roots to do is grow out and expand, because those roots are going to look for the water that they need in order to uptake that moisture and the nutrients. And this is especially important to do when your plants are young, because they're still establishing themselves. So if you can do this while your plants are young, you're going to have amazing productivity and growth later on in the season when your plants are actually producing their fruit, because they have these massive root systems where they can uptake all of the moisture and nutrients that they need. So how do we know when to water? And first off, wilting does not mean your plants need water. Your plants are naturally going to wilt. Just like we sweat, the plants don't have the ability to sweat. So they will lose water and also uptake water through their leaves. So just because your plants are wilting, that just means that they're not taking up water as fast as they're losing it through their leaves. And that doesn't mean that there's not water available in the soil. It's an adaptive trait that plants have to droop when it's really, really hot. And you'll see them perk up at the end of the night. So that's a great cue. If you see your plants wilting, but then you notice the weather is much cooler at the end of the night and your plants are still really sad, maybe you want to water. But just like we talked about yesterday, do the finger test. Stick your finger in the soil, and if the tip of your finger is wet and has some soil on it, that means your soil is adequately moist, and just allow your plants to bounce back from that really hot day. But do not overwater your plants, because overwatering can also cause wilting, waterlogged soil, and could potentially produce root rot. So it could be even worse for your plants. So don't overwater. Water deeply and irregularly, and make sure you do these tests every so often with your finger to make sure that your plants have the proper moisture in order to grow well. And don't freak out if you see them wilting. It's okay. Just do the check, and if they need water, then give them a drink. But my overall rule of thumb for watering is about 1 gallon per square foot every single week. And luckily for you, you've already put in all the legwork. You know exactly how many square feet or square meters that your garden is. So I made this reel right here, which you can check out. It tells you how to figure that out. In order to determine how much time you need to spend watering, you need to know the flow rate of your source. And in this reel, I cover everything that you need to know in order to figure out how to water 1 gallon per square foot per week. And if you're growing in pots or grow bags, for example, a 15-gallon grow bag is about a gallon. So if you want to make it simple, just get a gallon plastic jug, fill it with water, and water your grow bag once a week. And there you go. There's your water requirements satisfied for the week. But just remember, since you're growing in grow bags or pots, you might have to supplement a little bit more water. And by doing this soil moisture test, we'll tell you exactly when you need to water. So you can see this is just a loop. Depending on where you are, it's going to change how much water you need to provide your garden. So just use these fundamentals here for you to get a good understanding of when and how often you need to water your garden. In regards to mulching, we've talked a lot about this already, but I apply mulch in my pathways as well as on my garden soil. And in my pathways, I personally like to use a wood chip mulch. As we've said, it breaks down over time. and it provides a good barrier for weeds. So when I'm starting like a new mulched area, I like to provide a thick layer of mulch, anywhere from like 4 to 6 inches, to really smother out the existing growth that's there and also prevent weeds from coming in and growing on top. And if you do want to do this, you can also take cardboard, just make sure it doesn't have any ink or waxy coatings like that. Put the cardboard down to really smother out any plant or vegetation that or weeds that are growing there. And then you can apply that thick layer of mulch on top, and that cardboard will just break down over time. In regards to your garden beds, again, I would recommend using leaves. Only apply a thin layer of leaves on your garden beds. And straw is also another great option, but you only need a thin layer in order to suppress the weeds and retain the moisture and regulate that soil temperature. And it does amazing wonders for your garden, especially when your plants are younger and they haven't fully filled out their space yet. That's when mulch is even more important. So try these different methods of mulching in your garden and just see how big of a difference they can make, especially if you live in like a very dry climate. Watering your garden and then applying mulch is going to have a significant difference in your soil's ability to retain moisture and provide it to the plants. In regards to maintenance, we want to keep the garden weed free, right? That's our goal, because we don't want the weeds taking over the garden that we've worked so hard to create for our plants to grow in. So what I want you to do is just stay on top of the weeds. It's a fact of life. If you want to have a weed-free garden, you have to weed. Some people love it, some people hate it. I personally don't really love it that much, but I know how important it is for my garden and to stay on top of it. If you just go out to your garden and you see a weed coming out of the soil, pick it immediately. You can just pick it and throw it on the ground, and it's probably going to die because those roots need to be in the soil to live. So if you do this every day, you'll never have a weed problem ever. That's why maintenance is so important in the garden. That's enough. That's all I'm going to say about weeds. If you see one, just pick it, and your problem is already over. And lastly, let's talk about fertilizing. We've already talked about this a lot in day 4, but I just want to touch on it again. We've applied our fertilizer before we planted our garden. And once you start to see your first fruit to form, go ahead and give your soil some fertilizer again. And then once you have picked a large portion of your first crop set, that's when you can go ahead and apply that third dose of fertilizer, which you should get you the rest of the way through the season. So before planting, once you see fruit formation, and after you've picked your first set of fruit, in order to give the plant enough fertilizer, enough nutrients for it to go on and produce even more fruit throughout the season. And before you apply any more fertilizer, look at your plants, observe your plants, and this is where your gardening journal is going to help. But your plants should have luscious green leaves, and it's a reality, right? You're going to have pests and disease in the garden, especially if you have a brand new garden, because those pests are going to come in and be like, wow, what is this? This is brand new. I love it. And they're going to come in, but everything will find its balance, its equilibrium, especially if you use these companion planting methods that we have. Your garden is going to find that balance and things are going to work its way out. So don't freak out if you see pests and disease. But what I don't want you to do is think that you see some sort of nutrient deficiency and throw more fertilizer on it, because that's not always the answer. It could be pests and disease, and your plants don't necessarily need more fertilizer. And I'll talk about a few more things at the bottom in order to continue your gardening success. But one thing that you can do is try to figure out what the symptoms of the plant are, so that way you can actually take the proper action for the plant. And here are our green aminos again. They're fantastic, not just for rooting veggies like we talked about in our planting video on day 7, but you can also use your green aminos as a foliar spray to help reduce the plants and disease and add nutrients to your plants. And you can do this once a week and your plants will absolutely love it. Even though you're still applying fertilizer in your garden, your plants aren't going to absorb a lot of fertilizer from their leaves, but it will help your plant to fight those pests and disease with those carbohydrates, those proteins, those amino acids. So that's something that you can help first before you just go crazy trying all of these remedies in your garden. In regards to maintenance, that's pretty much it at the basic level. That's what you need to do in order to keep your garden growing and producing and thriving. And I want you to take this time to enjoy your garden. Make sure you're picking your veggies, right? That's a part of the maintenance too. Don't forget to go out there and actually pick your veggies during their maturity times, right? I want you to use your journals and write down when you've planted your plants, and then you should have an expectation like, oh, I planted my tomatoes this day, 60 days later is this. That's about when I should be expecting my tomatoes. So remember those things and expect those things and go out there and enjoy your garden for the reason that we've planted. Remember your goals. Remember why you planted your garden and keep those goals alive. Yeah, use your journal. Use your journal. We have an amazing last couple pages for you right here. So I talk about documenting your observations to learn even more about your garden. There's never been a truer statement, because you're going to begin to make connections between when pests arrive at different times of the year and when certain veggies thrive based on daytime temperatures, and you'll be surprised by all of the things you notice when you are looking. So go out there and be a gardener and unleash your inner child scientist to learn even more about your garden and explore the things that you question to immerse yourself even further into your gardening adventure. This is what makes gardening so fun. And on this very last page of the gardening journal, I have a page that you can continue to print out for every single week of the year. So you can record your average daytime temperatures, your average rainfall, your average sunlight hours, and the pests you observe, the plants that are thriving, the plants that are struggling, and what you harvested. So every single week, just continue to update this, and then you'll have an amazing resource for you to come back to. For example, let's say I did my journal for 2 years and I see that the squash vine borer just kills my squash plants, but I see the squash vine borer every year the first 3 weeks of May. But after that, it goes away. So maybe, I'll wait until June to plant my squash, and then there's no squash vine borer, and then I get amazing squash harvests just from that one simple observation. That's how helpful this is going to be for the overall success of your garden, and I'm so excited for you to continue to use this throughout your season and throughout your years of gardening. And here are a few more tips for you to continue growing your garden success. We talked about monitoring for pest and disease in our journal, but I also want you to do a soil test. Doing a soil test is so important for you to understand how your garden soil is doing. How are the microbes doing in your soil that are working so hard in order to break down these nutrients and supply your plants with the nutrients that they need in order to grow? The only way that you'll know that you have the perfect conditions for your plants is by doing a soil test. So you want to measure the pH. At a minimum, we need to have a good pH for our soil, which is between 6 and 7. That's the ideal range that you're looking for. And we can talk about in future lessons on how to modify this, but I also have lessons or reels that I've put out that show you exactly how to do this. And I'll make sure that I link to that right here as well for you to reference. But having soil pH you got to make the right environment for your plants. And after we test for soil pH, we can also test for micro and macronutrients in your soil, as well as organic matter. And a lot of soil tests can do this. One great resource that you'll probably have in your city is the Master Gardeners Program or your local agriculture extension. They will have test kits that you can go and get. You can get the test box for free, and then you ship that soil sample that you take following the instructions out to your local extension corporate office. So for me, since I'm in Virginia, I send it off to Virginia Tech, and they send me back a soil sample result as well as actions to take in order to amend my soil properly for my garden, which is amazing. And it's about $10, depending on which choice you choose. It may be more or less expensive, but it is a relatively inexpensive thing that you should be doing every single year for you to know the status of your garden, so that way you can keep it thriving. There are some at-home tests available, and one that I really like is made by Solvita, this garden care kit. And if you can click this, it'll take you right to the link on Amazon if you want to buy it on Amazon. But that kit has a pH soil test that you can do at home, a compost maturity test. So if you buy bulk compost or any compost that you buy, you can actually test that to see if it's actually finished and ready to add to your garden, as well as a soil microbe activity test, which basically tells you how active the soil microbes are in your soil and whether or not they need more fertilizer in order to keep your plants thriving. I'm blown away by this test, and I find it very interesting the way it works, and I've used it in my garden and it's worked really well. So if you want an at-home soil test that you can do at home, definitely grab a garden care kit and just see the results that you get from that. Well, that's going to sum things up for this bonus module. And again, I just can't say thank you enough for taking my course, and I truly hope you learned so much and are taking away all of these valuable lessons and fundamentals to grow your best garden ever. Again, make sure you reach out to me, let me know what you thought of the course, leave some comments throughout the modules, and I cannot wait to see your gardens growing. Send me all of the pictures, all of the videos. I want to see those results of what this course has done to make you a better gardener.